Welcome, everyone. My name is Frederick Winsness. I'm with NetHope and with the NetHope Solution Center and the NetHope Solution Center webinar series. Today, we are continuing our series of webinars with the No Loss Generation Tech Task Force. We're very pleased to have Microsoft presenting and a few partners presenting on Microsoft's resources for refugees and looking at some case studies on how to get started with those resources. Before we get going, I want to go over some basic housekeeping rules as usual in our webinars. I have set everybody to mute on entry, so please keep your lines muted to minimize background noise. We want this to be as interactive as possible, so please open the chat window and place your questions there, and we will facilitate a Q&A session towards the end of the hour today. We're also having a little bit of a webinar satisfaction poll, and that we would hope you answer for us towards the very end of the hour. We are recording this today, so we'll be sending a follow-up email with all the presentations or all the slides, as well as a recording to this, so you can either review this again or share with your colleagues as appropriate. So with that out of the way, I will, let's see if WebEx is cooperating with us here. For some reason or another, it does not want to go to the next slide. Well, that's interesting. Let's see if we can get this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this over to Leila. Leila, my last slide does not show up for some reason. So just turn it over to you, and you can talk a little bit about the NLG Tech Task Force and introduce the speakers.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As there are a number of new participants on this webinar, I will take just a couple of minutes to provide a brief overview of the No Loss Generation Technology Task Force. So if you can advance to the next slide, Frederick. So the task force was set up 6 months ago by NetHope and the No Loss Generation Initiative with the support from Microsoft to facilitate collaboration between the humanitarian actors in the private sector. So we're connecting experts in refugee response with the private sector expertise and resources in order to deliver at scale and long-term impact. And we do that by focusing on a couple of things: cross-sector information sharing. This webinar is an example of information sharing and resource sharing. And then also project-based technology-enabled collaborations with NGOs, private sector companies, and academic institutions. And membership is open to all global and local NGOs, private sector companies, academic institutions, and host governments. So if you haven't joined the NLG Tech Task Force yet, please do that using the link that Frederick has shared in the chat window. And on this slide, you see some of the organizations that are currently participating in the task force. So before I actually share with you some of the new resources, let me just mention that yesterday we held NLG Silicon Valley Symposium here in San Francisco, and this symposium was co-hosted by Microsoft, UNICEF, NetHope, and World Vision. And we'll also be sending an event blog post to you later this month, so you can get some more information about the outcomes out of the event. In the meantime, we wanted to encourage you to review 2 new resources that are available to you, and please feel free to share them with your colleagues. The first one is the overview of NLG's Youth and Adolescence pillar, some really important data points and some of the key challenges highlighted in that document. The second document is both important for the private sector representatives on this call, as well as those of you who are working with the private sector in your programs. That is the NLG Private Sector Guide, which is basically a short guide that provides both examples and a framework for private sector engagement in supporting children and youth affected by the Syria and Iraq crisis. If you have any questions about either one of those documents, please let us know. And as mentioned, more information about the event, including the event slides and videos that were featured at the event, will be provided shortly. So just a couple of things about the additional resources that are available to you that are very much related to the task force work over the past 6 months. After the launch, following the launch in March, we've been hosting a series of webinars. These webinars are really designed to highlight the programs and technology solutions that support the needs of refugee and IDP children and youth, with the goal to help you provide you with the new resources and also initiate new collaborations or partnerships, both within the international development community and with the private sector companies. So be thinking about how you might be leveraging some of the resources as well as program design approaches that will be shared on this webinar. What you also have featured on this webinar is two important things. One is the recordings and recap posts of the past webinars, so some really great resources on the solutions and programs from organizations like HP, Udemy, IRC, Coursera, Chiron, and many more. So if you haven't either joined those webinars or read the recap post, please do so and feel free to share with your community. And then the second is we invite you to help us co-curate the webinars by sharing with us the topics that you're most interested in hearing about or the programs that you think should be highlighted on the webinars. And Frederick has shared the form in the chat window. And in terms of what's coming up, we'll be sending this week invitation to our October webinar featuring a database of higher education opportunities for refugees. And then in November, we'll have a world reader talk about their digital library of ebooks and their work with refugees. So now I'm thrilled to welcome our speakers today, Jane, Andrea, Bajak, and Kim. Jane will introduce the work of Microsoft Philanthropies, and then Andrea will talk about Microsoft's Resources for Refugees, which is a set of technology training and curriculum resources that are available to all of you to use in your programs. And Bajak and Kim will then share how these resources are being used today as part of their skills training programs for refugees that their organizations are implementing in Lebanon and Turkey. We hope you enjoy this webinar, and now I'd like to introduce Jane. And Jane, over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And just touching base on yesterday's symposium, it was a really great event, and I was very pleased to host it. Really quickly, I wanted to give you some context about Microsoft's humanitarian action work and how we are approaching it. Do I have control, or can somebody move to the next slide?
You should have control now.
No.
Okay, I will take control.
Yeah, if you can just do it, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
So while we work through that, we believe that technology can play a powerful role when put in the hands of displaced people and organizations that are helping them. That's why Microsoft Philanthropies is investing and partnering to make a difference in this space. This commitment is rooted in our company mission to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. For the past 30 years, Microsoft has provided technology and funding, including employee giving, to humanitarian organizations around the world, and we've responded to more than 300 humanitarian action efforts in that time. But about a year and a half ago, we started looking much more broadly and thinking about not just natural disasters, which is where a lot of corporations play, but how do we change our charter to span the different types of humanitarian crisis, from natural disaster to famine to health epidemic and to conflict, and play a different role in those different types of scenarios. So we have a new charter, a new set of protocols, and a new set of portfolio of things that we can now pull from depending on the humanitarian crisis at hand. And we've also launched a very specific framework for which we do this, and we launched this about 6 months ago. If I can move that, I don't think I can. There you go. We've launched a framework where we support across 3 pillars of humanitarian action. One is we empower first responder organizations. So this is where on sudden onset disaster or crisis, or even slow onset crisis like a famine, we are able to activate and provide resources to those organizations that are responding in the crisis. So for the past couple of weeks, it's been a little busy. We've been supporting the South Asia floodings, the Mexican earthquake, and of course, 2 rather large hurricanes that have hit the U.S. And in that case, we provide cash, we provide technology services, which is actually quite valuable. We have the ability to activate technology specialists to support nonprofits and public sector players to do break fix as well as solution creation at time of disaster. We also can do things like activate free Skype calling. We can pull across our different media channels to really promote and advocate for donation. So we have Bing, we have Microsoft.com, we have MSN, where we can push out a lot of information. So we have a lot of new levers that we can pull at the time of crisis. We also, in the second pillar, have brought some of the best work that we've done from our kind of tech for social impact side, where we support nonprofits with technology and help nonprofits adopt and use a technology for mission, to this particular space, and specifically focused on humanitarian organizations. So it's not just software and services and technology services, but we're also trying to add more expertise around some critical areas like cybersecurity and privacy, identity, using technology such as facial recognition to reunify families. So we're trying to bring technical expertise and thought leadership, as well as broad donations that we can do to help support these organizations prepare as well as respond and rebuild in time of crisis. And finally, which is where we're going to spend time today, is how we empower displaced people themselves. And so we have some different programming to do that, but the way we approach it is that again, we think technology can play a really powerful role here, and for the people themselves, help them connect and learn and ultimately rebuild their lives to create more promising futures. So the focus is connectivity and communication solutions. So we've actually partnered with NetHope around Wi-Fi hotspots, IRC and Mercy Corps around refugee.info platform and apps to help refugees get more information about their situation and asylum process. We've done work around language training and translation programs. We have some very good translation programs and apps that are available, including a PowerPoint plugin that does instant translation as you present. We've also invested quite a bit in broad psychosocial and employability programs, because we know that refugees are not all in the place and ready to learn, but they actually need to help recover from the crisis that they've been through. So we've invested a lot in Mercy Corps and other organizations to broadly approach psychosocial programs and employability programs. And then finally, which is our topic today, is around IT skills and certification programs. We've made available a set of content and curriculum, which we're going to cover today, and we've helped try to scale out availability of that. It's all available for free. We've worked with NetHope across the Tech Task Force. We've also partnered with international NGOs as well as local level organizations, which I think is super important in this crisis, to partner with the local level organizations that not only can serve the refugees, but serve the vulnerable communities that were already in place when the refugees arrived, that have now caused even more concerns and put more people at risk. So it's important to work with those local organizations. And so we're investing a great deal in this space and helping expand some of the work we do around digital skills, computational skills, computer science skills, entrepreneurial skills, which is very important. A lot of refugees can't work, so how do we help them take an idea and build a business? So a lot of focus there, and glad that we've been making some investments. To date, we've invested approximately and committed approximately $5 million in cash funding, and over $35 million in technology grants. So pretty big investment on our part. We will be continuing for quite some time in this space, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll be monitoring the chat window, and I'm going to hand it over to Andrea to kind of dive now into our resources.
Thank you, Jane. All
You're
right,
welcome.
everyone. So the purpose of that I'm going to go through is both the resources for refugees that we have up on the website, as well as I'm going to start with a bit of a get started guide that we've learned from our nonprofit partners, the process that they go through to select and implement their resources. So I'll start with the get started guide and then go to the online resource website. All right, through our Microsoft Philanthropies Digital Skills Program, we've curated these resources for nonprofits that are working with refugee communities. Before you begin any work with a refugee community in the digital skills or education space, we do recommend that you assess your organization to bring on the capacity of teaching and implementing these types of programs. So to start off, any new work stream within your nonprofit, it's always a good idea to evaluate your organization's capacity to take on this programmatic work. If your nonprofit already engages in education or programmatic training, you may already know your own capacity to bring on this work. Otherwise, we've got a couple great organizations that you can partner with on the call today. So our first recommended step is really just a needs assessment. arcenciel is sharing their needs assessment that they have created, but the purpose of the needs assessment is to determine and address the digital skills needs of your beneficiaries within that refugee community that you're serving. The assessment should cover the community's current knowledge, areas of interest, their current level of understanding, and use of technology. The assessment can also help you understand the existing resources available within the community. Maybe there are computers and maybe there aren't. Maybe there are only phones. Our second step is evaluate. Use the feedback that you receive from the needs assessment to determine the criteria for your community. For example, you find that in the needs assessment that you do, that your beneficiaries really need basic digital literacy skills, and they primarily need it in Arabic, and they have access to online resources. So we'll use that criteria to select the resources in the next stage. In the next stage, after you've created your criteria, you're really selecting those resources, and my next step is to go through what those resources are. So you're selecting based on the criteria that you've created. Then you're creating an action plan. After you've selected your resources, you determine how you will go about educating your beneficiaries. Are you able to deliver the training directly with refugees? Should you partner with another organization, or should you do a train-the-trainer model? And we'll explore a couple of those models in the case studies today. And determine your plan of action, which route or which model is going to work best. Then you're going to begin your work, and after you've determined your approach, you're really implementing the program. You're starting the work with the training partner, or you're training the teachers themselves. We know these communities change often, so as you continue on, our last step is really assessing what you've done. Looking back at the criteria that you've created, have you met it? Looking back at the goals that you've created, have you met it? And then if needed, as your community changes, you're going back and restarting the process of selecting the right resources. So next I'll go through the actual resources themselves. And to do so, I'm going to share my screen. All right, great. So this is www.microsoft.com/refugees. On this page, we've taken the resources that we have and we've really curated it into 4 different categories. The first category you can see here is develop a fundamental understanding of technology. And these are really fundamental core skills and competencies that we believe everyone should know and have access to. As you look at this, our first one is digital literacy. On this page, you'll find if the content is available online or offline, whether there's a certificate available, and the best age range. So in my previous example, I said your community needs access to basic digital literacy skills. You found that from your needs assessment. On this page, you can then select the language and pull up the digital literacy curriculum in Arabic. It will take you directly to the resource page where you can either download the content or you can access the programming directly through this site if there's internet access. Also in the basic fundamental understanding of technology section, there's Microsoft Office training, as well as an online and offline workshop that you can use within the community. That's a little bit more creative integration of these digital skills. Our second category is around learning the fundamentals of computer science. And the basics here really teach you computer concepts without a PC or a mobile phone in front of you. So you're learning through active, engaging games and scenarios with others through demonstration projects. So on this site, CS Unplugged and CS Fundamentals Unplugged are a great resource if you have a community that doesn't have internet access, but you still want to teach them how to use a computer. So in this example, the content is available online and offline. It's suitable for ages 4+, and you can select a variety of different languages. I pulled up the Farsi version of the binary numbers resource here so that you can see what it looks like. Also in the fundamentals of computer science, we do have a Create and Code workshop, which is another 2-hour workshop that you can utilize either online or offline, and also a creative way to learn the fundamentals of computer science. Our third category is really a deep dive into computer science, but it starts out with some really fun interactive tutorials with Hour of Code. There are over 40 tutorials that you can access online through the Hour of Code that many of our partners utilize throughout the year. It's suitable for ages 4+. There is a certificate available, and it is available in a variety of languages. If you want to go a little deeper but still keep that fun coding content, we've got Code Studio listed on here where you have 20 hours of content available. This is available online and offline and suitable for ages 4+. Lastly, we do understand employment and employability resources and skills are very important. So we've identified 3 resources that we feel would be good in this area. The first is the Tamal resources. This is an online site that offers career guidance, skills assessments, as well as hundreds of online courses. It is based on the country or region that you're in, so we do recommend going to the country-specific site to access those resources. We do have an offline employability toolkit that covers writing your resume, cover letters, interviews, and interviewing type job skills. Also available in a few languages and suitable really for the 18+, those who are 18+. And lastly, we've partnered on with the International Youth Foundation on Build Your Business, which is content and curriculum around entrepreneurship and building your small business. So this is our site with our resources. We do recommend going through that Get Started guide in order to select the right resources for the beneficiaries that you work with. And now I will turn it over. I would like to introduce Bajak Sharel, who's our General Manager with the Habitat Association.
Thank you, and good afternoon from Istanbul. As Andrea just presented, I am part of Habitat Association, which has been active throughout Turkey for the last 20 years. And for a period of 12 years, we've been partnering with Microsoft to enhance e-transformation of Turkey. And we've been working with different socio-economic groups all around Turkey within this period to help the digitalization of these individuals. So we've been working on digital literacy, and as well as we've been supporting computational thinking and computer science skills of Turkish people from different ages and from different geographies within these 12 years. And as a development organization, we understood the need of mainly Syrian refugees living in Turkey, but not only Syrians, other refugees coming from other countries. So we've developed a comprehensive digitalization and livelihoods program for the new members of Turkish society, specifically the refugee communities. And we are partnering with Microsoft as well as UNHCR, member of this task force, to execute this program. We have mainly different focus targets. So on one hand, we are aiming to contribute to the empowerment of refugees as individuals. On the other hand, we want to support their livelihoods through providing formal employment opportunities and helping them to create their businesses. In the meanwhile, we think that livelihood support would have a cultural impact, and it would create a social cohesion between Turkish community members as well as the refugee community members. So our program has a strong digital skills building focus, which I will be explaining briefly in the next slide. But what we are trying to do is what we've been doing with the Turkish community. So on one hand, we are helping refugees to develop the core digital and computational thinking skills so that through these skills they can become active members of the economic activity. So through that, we aim to provide employment support, entrepreneurship support, and support for networking between Turkish youth and refugee youth communities. Our digital skills building program benefits from a lot from Microsoft's resources and tools. So on one hand, as I've just explained, we work with refugee children, youth, and elderly on digital literacy skills. which includes, as you can see, Microsoft Windows Office, social media literacy, internet safety and security, as well as e-public and e-government services. On the other hand, we wanted to help refugee community to find employment opportunities and create their job opportunities and businesses. So we go beyond digital literacy skills, and we also help them to develop computer science skills. Many of these resources have been presented by Andrea just a minute ago, but we also use other resources so that refugees can become self-employed, or they can create their enterprises as well. And we believe refugees as new members of the Turkish community could in fact develop Turkish economy and contribute to Turkish economy, bringing different skills from the countries that they're coming from. And maybe I should have told you before, but we've designed this program doing an assessment on the digital skills and needs of refugees, as well as their financial needs as entrepreneurs and their entrepreneurial attitudes. And hopefully by the end of the year, we will support 300 new employment among refugee communities, and 80 new businesses will be developed by refugees in Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baja. Next, we have Kim. We could. Kim Issa, who's an external relationships manager with arcenciel.
Hello everyone, this is Kim. I work with arcenciel. Arcenciel is a Lebanese NGO that was created 30 years ago during the civil war in Lebanon in 1985. I've been with them for a few years. I'm Lebanese myself, and I'm going to be talking generally about arcenciel, but very specifically about the program we've been doing with Microsoft using these resources that we've been talking about. Arcenciel has a few programs in which we work. We work in agriculture, environment, youth, mobility, etc. We operate all over Lebanon. Lebanon has borders with Syria in the north and in the east, and with Israel in the south, the Mediterranean Sea being on the west. So it means that we've had a lot of influx of Syrian refugees from the north side and from the east side since the beginning of the crisis in Syria. Arcenciel Center were already positioned in these areas, so in the north and in the east, due to the fact that the communities there are already vulnerable communities. We are now in the 4th month of our 6-month program with Microsoft, where we are teaching the skills that we've just talked about to 100 refugees and host population. So these are people who are either Iraqi refugees who came from Iraq, mainly Christian Iraqis, that was the main influx into Lebanon, Syrian refugees, all religions of course, and then local populations that received all these refugee populations. Until now we have trained above 45 people, and we are currently training 25 others. The objective is to train 100 trainers who will in turn train other people by the end of 6 months. So we still have 2 months to do that. All right, so what are the resources that we're using? Like Andrea said, we started with doing a needs assessment. The idea is not to impose what we think is important for people. It's more to understand what they need and see how we can answer that. What it is that they would like to learn and what it is that would help them get better involved in society. So we did a needs assessment, which we sent to above 12 NGOs across the country to understand what it is that they would need. Based on that, we used the Microsoft trainings that are existent and used a few of the trainings that they did to give them to the different people that came to our centers. We are done with the Beirut training now, and we'll be training the North and the Bekaa region this month. So after the needs assessment, we then gave them trainings. The trainings were given by our own employees. These are arcenciel people. We are 500 employees, 80% of which have a difficulty themselves. The people training them are people who are themselves originally vulnerable people. They took the training from Microsoft and then delivered it to the different refugees and host communities who were here. We delivered the basic digital literacy training, the soft skills, freelancing, entrepreneurship, and are now starting basic coding. We also realized that it's very important, of course, to give them the skills, but it's also very important to give them the skills to train. So not everyone can be a trainer without knowing how. So we decided to give our audience a TOT, a training of trainers. The idea is for them to know how to deliver a training of anything. In this case, they will end up with a USB stick that contains all the Microsoft trainings, that also contains the materials that we've added to the Microsoft trainings, that are videos, the real-life scenarios, things that we added to make the program a little bit more fun. And so people, at the end of this training, we will have 100 people who are able to train others on the Microsoft training. So these are the resources we've been using. I will briefly tell you what worked well, what we think worked well, at least until now. We are at the middle of our training, and what we think we could have done better. What worked well? The topic and the delivery. So we realized with our needs assessment that people were really interested in this topic. They are mainly youth, and we all know that we can all expect that youth will be interested in a topic like this one. For those that are a little advanced in digital literacy, the basic coding is quite attractive. For those who don't know, they would love to know how to use Word, how to use Excel. A lot of them said they would like to know how to use Facebook as well, but that was not in the program. So the topic was an interesting topic, and they loved the delivery because we tried to adapt our training to their real-life scenarios. We've been working with them in many fronts and in many domains, and so we know by now how to address them. The trainings were delivered in Arabic, most of them. We were speaking in Arabic all the time, and we did realize that if we were speaking in English or if the slides were in English, a lot of people would have had trouble. So it was great that the language was adapted. On the basic digital literacy, though, since we are in Lebanon, and in Lebanon people speak English, most people actually speak English as well, it's very rare to find a computer in Arabic. So what we tried to do is to train them on an English-looking computer, but speaking in Arabic. So they would remember where something is based on its color or how it looks in English, which is what they will usually find in the future. So we wanted to equip them completely, but explaining things in Arabic. So that went well, the topic and the delivery. The second thing that went well was the fact that we targeted refugees and host population, just like Jane said before. The host population were already vulnerable people who lived at the borders and who are often forgotten communities by their own government. Receiving an influx of refugees, and I must add that Lebanon received above 2 million refugees on a population of 4 million. That's now 1/3 of the actual population living in country. So it was, infrastructure-wise, it was a really big influx. So the host population suffered this a lot. Some villages that contained 5,000 Lebanese received 30,000 Syrian refugees. So that's why it was very important to decrease the tensions and to add to the social cohesion to involve both the host populations and the targets and the refugees. Refugees being Iraqi and Syrian, like I said. And finally, the partnerships. And on this one, Microsoft Lebanon has helped us quite a bit. We've partnered with other NGOs and with municipalities on two fronts. The first one was for us to find people to train. So our trainees, we reached out to the UNHCR, who had a list of people to train. We reached out to Caritas, which is another big NGO, who had a list of people to train, and this with the help of Microsoft here. Depending on the region, we reached out to the big players. This way, we were able to fill our trainings and much more than expected. We also reached out to the municipalities and to the social workers of municipalities for them to tell us if they have people who might be interested in that. So that was the first partnership, successful partnership, at least in Beirut, but we already see it in the other regions that we did. The second important partnership is with the trainings that that our trainees are going to give. So the idea is that we are now training 100 people, and afterwards it's up to them to train more people. We have already had success stories. So we've already had one of our trainees become a trainer for 50 people in the north, 50 ladies in the north. She's an Iraqi refugee, and I will tell you her story later on. But she took our training, and she's already given the training to other people. Other people with other NGOs, like the Lebanese League of Women in Business, the USAID, etc. So we partnered with other people on two fronts, to get the trainees and then to give the trainings. All right. What we could have done better. There are three things that we suggest if any of the people in the listening now would like to implement such a program. These are things that we suggest you do based on our own experience, of course. The language barrier. 25% of people had an issue with English. It's true that in Lebanon we speak English, but a lot of the people in the Arab world often don't. So the fact that the computers were in English was maybe a problem for them. We were able to address this problem by speaking to them in Arabic and teaching them through colors and looks and shapes of things how to understand the basic digital literacy. The second one would be hardware distribution. Of course, we understand for many very valid reasons that we could not distribute laptops to these people for them to continue their training afterwards, themselves or through other people. But it is important because a lot of them do not have laptops, clearly, and some of them don't even have phones, but most of them do have phones though. But still, I mean, when you learn Microsoft Office, you rarely do it on your phone, at least not in the beginning. So hardware distribution would have been important. How we try to counter this is by putting all our centers available, making them available for these trainers to come and still use the computers available in the centers, in the different regions. We also told all the NGOs whose trainees we've got to make their computers available as well, and they're all very happy about it. So they all have an area that the trainees can use. The last one is to have longer TOTs. So the training of trainers was a great idea, it seems. People really enjoyed it. I don't know if you guys are aware, but now livelihood is a big subject for refugees. So it's all about giving them training. And so very often they told us that they get bored in training. In this case, they were very excited about the trainings, and they were sad when it ended. They kept saying, no, can you do it again next week, etc. The training of trainers is an important one. And it allows people to understand how to give a presentation, how to talk to the audience, what types of examples to give, etc. We suggest they be of 10 hours. We've given 8 hours, and we're happy to share any material with anyone who's interested. But we do think 10 hours would be best. We had to decrease the timing because the digital literacy took a bit longer than expected. How is the project sustainable? So it's very important to say that this is a development project. It's not an emergency project. People are here and have been here since 2012. We are not anymore at the point of distributing food and clothing. It's more about training people and giving them skills that they can then use wherever they go. And this is why arcenciel, as a development NGO, because we are a development NGO, we're very happy to receive a project like this one. This project is sustainable in many ways. I just have to give you a little intro first on on Lebanon. The Lebanese government has been very involved in the refugee crisis, which is normal seeing as 2 million refugees came in, a country of 4. But they did say that Syrian refugees are only allowed to work in 3 areas, which are waste management, agriculture, and construction, which means that basically everything people are learning in this training is not something they can officially become an employee in, which is not very good, at least as they say in Lebanon. So what we did do is we tried to counter this barrier by doing 3 things. The first one is that we take the IT skills that we think will help them most get a job within their communities. It doesn't have to be official jobs that are registered. It can be freelance people who help someone with specific IT things, who type things for universities, who can do Excel sheets for students, etc. So things that are more like freelance jobs. So that's the first one, and that's how they can use these skills in order to generate revenue later on. The second one is they are now trainers. So they can train people, just like this girl that I've told you about. They can now train them on anything, and specifically on the Microsoft trainings, because they have the whole training and the support material, just like videos, games, etc. We've given them everything. We've already trained 10 people, and we will be training 400 as of next month. When I say we, I mean our trainees will be training 400 people as of next month. So they have the IT skills, they can be trainers, and finally, with the freelance material, they learn how to build a home business. They can start any small business. They know how to do a marketing plan. They know how to do their home financials, of course, in a basic way, but still it's good enough for one person. We had someone who wanted to start giving guitar lessons because he's a guitar player. He aims to open a small school afterwards. There was a girl who does jewelry, and she designed a small business plan on how she would be doing her jewelry, etc. So these are small businesses that also don't necessarily have to be registered, and there are ways for them to generate revenue. So this is how we try to counter a little bit the current environment. My last one is a little story about this girl called Martina. Martina is the girl who had the circle in the photo. She's an Iraqi refugee. She had to leave Iraq 2 years ago because her family is Christian and they were living in an area with a lot of Kurdish people, and they got scared being a minority there. So they fled the country and came to Lebanon. When they came to Lebanon, she started doing small jobs. She's now 19. She started doing small jobs like waitressing, etc. And everywhere she went, she was either verbally or even physically abused. So she decided to leave every time, and every time she started a new job, maybe because people saw she was already weak, it did not go well. She was one of the most vulnerable. She ended up working at an NGO close to arcenciel, or close to one of our centers called Issa, where she was giving English classes. When we opened a new center next to her, she came and she started participating in our youth program activities like yoga and guitar and English, and she started training other people on English. When she saw the brochure that we were giving Microsoft courses in another center, she came and she participated. And since she already knew English and she was quite smart, she learned very fast. And after a month and a half of training, I think, yes, Microsoft Lebanon told us that they need a woman trainer to train 10 women in the north of Lebanon. And so we recommended Martina, who went and gave a training to 10 women in the north of Lebanon. We were also asked to start training people in a prison also in the north of Lebanon, which we will do through one of our trainees as well. So this is Martina at the beginning, and this is her training the other women in the north. The women in the north are all refugees. They are in a city called Tripoli. It's Tripoli of Lebanon, not Tripoli of Libya. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And Andrew, if you want to wrap up, or Jane want to wrap up a little bit on the presentation, so we can also go into the Q&A session. There's been a lot of discussion in the chat window, and we'll try to sort through some of that and repeat some of the answers verbally as well. But Jane or Andrew, any quick wrap-ups here based on all the fantastic information and the heartwarming types of stories being shared already?
Yeah, happy to wrap up. If we could advance just one more slide. And first of all, thank you for joining the webinar, and we're happy to answer any questions that we can over the next 10, 15 minutes. This is our website, www.microsoft.com/refugees, and this contains the digital skills curated content that we've found works well within refugee communities. The Get Started guide that I mentioned will be posted within the next week to that site, and we'll also have a copy of this webinar link posted to the site as well. With that, Frederick, I think we're open to asking any questions.
Yeah, we have a host of questions, and I'm not sure if everybody's been reading through the chat. It's got a little unruly for a while here. People are very excited about these topics. But maybe we can repeat some of it verbally. The first question that came in was for Jane, and it was a question if you're sharing your approach and work with other companies to inspire them to do more for displaced people. And
yes, we do share quite a bit with our peer companies, both one-on-one as well as in venues such as the Tech Task Force Symposium yesterday. And you'll find that a lot of companies are actually evolving. They're just maybe not sharing publicly. It can be a sensitive topic. And then there's companies that we proactively work with. So we proactively work with TripAdvisor and Google on refugee.info, for example, or for the Wi-Fi hotspots with Cisco and Google. So we do know of the companies that are actively doing work in this space, and we proactively engage with them. But we also share kind of our methodology and how we're changing and encourage others to come along.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Leila, did you want to jump in with a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of questions that are really related to also a conversation that we had at a symposium yesterday around connecting that learning to earning. So really, what are some of the, and this is a question to Bajak and Kim in terms of what you are doing locally. How are you connecting now skilled or trained refugees to job opportunities, and also if you are doing anything to prepare them, to provide any job readiness support, whether it's resume writing, job search, interview preps, or if you're working with the local employers to find specific jobs and placements. So if you could speak to any of that, including what are some of the challenges that you might be dealing with on the ground. So I think they're muted. Bajak or Kim, if you could comment.
Hello. Yes, this is Kim.
Hi there.
Hi. Yes, we do. So to answer both your questions, the first one is we do give how to do an interview, fixing CV trainings, etc. So we do prep them for the job market. But like I said, in Lebanon, officially they're not allowed to. So legally, they're not allowed to do it. And so we try to give them skills that they can then use without being officially registered. Officially registered, as in they can be freelancers. So we do connect them. So very often, just like I said, the prison came to us, the girls training came to us. They're training now in the south. So all these, instead of sending our own trainers, we're sending the trainees of this program now. So whenever we receive opportunities, we do send at least the ones who are capable of giving training. We do send them up. But it will not be legally registered as a job because it's not allowed.
And have you done anything potentially with the remote work? So that's another topic that's come up, and that some global NGOs have started testing.
Sorry, remote work, you mean working from home?
Yes, and working on the projects where employers might be elsewhere, so outside of Lebanon, and doing online work. So it's similar to business process outsourcing.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we aim to do this with our trainees. It was still too early to do on this one, but now that the first round is done and that we do have some people who qualify, in Lebanon there's a big move on entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of companies, tech companies, that are working from Lebanon to outside, and they do work with freelancers. So once we have good enough people that have a strong CV, we would be happy to recommend them to the people that we know in the tech industry. So yes, we will partner them with private enterprises.
And I believe Bajak also had a couple comments. So Bajak, please come off mute and address the questions.
Yes, actually, refugees have the right to work and establish their businesses in Turkey, and we are working together with the chambers individually as well as the Union of Chambers, so that and we are also working with the members of the chambers, the local companies. We are providing work permit consultation to the employers and refugees as employees, and we are also paying the work permit fee to the government. And also we are also supporting refugees to become self-employed and build their businesses. So we provide financial and technical support so that they have they can create their formal businesses in Turkey.
Thank you, Bajak. You also answered a bunch of questions privately to me. I'm going to post that back for everybody's benefit so you can read through that. Very useful information. We have a couple more questions, but as we're finishing up here, I'm going to display the webinar satisfaction poll. If people want to give a little bit of feedback to what you've heard today, that would be terrific. Leila, did you had another couple of questions relative to program integration. You had a question for Habitat on how easy or difficult it was to integrate these resources into existing programs, and what were some of the lessons learned?
Yes, and specifically, if somebody is going to take the programs, and I think Andrea is documenting that too, and we'll share if they were going to take the resources that are available today and integrate them into their programs tomorrow, like what does it take to get started? Arcenciel shared a little bit of that, some of the considerations like language, for example, but just really looking for Habitat to comment on kind of first couple of steps that are required in order to really activate these great resources and make them useful in the context of the program that you are implementing. Bajak, I think you're still muted. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. Yes. So actually, I think we had the opportunity to have these years of experience working on digitalization and computer science skills support, but I think it's always very important to work together with Microsoft staff and sector experts. So the technical expertise is with your organization, and then you find a way to localize and multiply it to the target group, refugees, specifically in this case. So all of our content and trainers, they had experience in Turkish, but we didn't have any tools in Arabic. So language was also a barrier in Turkey. We speak 2 different languages, and there is almost no capacity in Arabic in the country. So, but now we train Arabic-speaking trainers, and we translated the content, and we also use the Arabic content provided by Microsoft. So I think it's really important to bring different resources and capacities together, and also work with the refugees as part of the solution and resources. I think that's how we were able to overcome these challenges.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We are at the back of the top of the hour, and we're running out of time. There is a quick question for Microsoft I think would be important to address as we close out. Will you be adding any new content in the future? And if so, how do we find out?
Andrew, do you want to speak to short-term planning, and I can bring some broader context as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Because we started this work in the January timeframe this year around curating the resources, and we're seeing our nonprofit partners and what they select, we're really going to take the learnings from our nonprofit partners who are using the resources and then continue to curate the list. So we'll be doing that probably in the next couple of months for a refresh of the content, and just make sure that the resources are still relevant, that they're all being utilized, and if there's new content or languages being updated, those will all be posted on that website.
And I think from a broader perspective, and as we think about refugees, one of the concrete things that came out of yesterday that I'm kind of excited about is the idea of better defining the career pathways for a specific refugee audience, so that from that learner to earner, and what does that look like for this audience, and then see where things are, where we have resources and where there are gaps, and how private sector and NGOs can help fill those gaps in content. So for example, I think there's a lot of opportunity to do more basic employability and entrepreneurial skills content. So how do we pursue that across a number of different organizations? So I think from an industry perspective, we're looking broadly at resources as well, and we from Microsoft will help fill gaps that make sense for us and where we have the capabilities to do so.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. We are officially out of time, and this has been an information-packed session. Hopefully people will have a chance to go back and revisit some of this and also share the content with their colleagues, and we're looking forward to keeping up with Microsoft and your evolving resources going forward. So I want to thank Jane, Andrea, Bajak, and Kim, and everybody for their contributions here. Thank you all also very much, Leila, for organizing this webinar, and also to all of the attendees for the great questions and incredible engagement in the chat window and interaction here. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back in touch very soon. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.